Hello, my friends. It is Thursday, November 28th, 2024, and this is three big stories, which is actually seven big stories today. And all seven are bad news for Putin. So Putin was showing his displeasure yesterday or last night, night overnight, with a massive drone and missile strike. It cost him 500,000 or $500 million. And this is what he said was retaliation for the long-range missile strike. And so apparently his red line doesn't actually exist, and he's been exposing himself every time he says something like this, that the red lines don't exist. He was meeting in Kazakhstan, and some things interestingly happened there. So he and his counterpart in Kazakhstan were signing agreements on economic and energy and transit cooperation, and so far so good that looks. But then he's at the CTSO meeting, and he says that Russia produces 10 times more missiles than all NATO countries put together and will increase production by a quarter. And he says new missile systems can appear in Russia as well, and the Russian Iskander is an analog of all three modifications of the ATACMS, but it has longer range. And Russia's hypersonic systems have no analogs in the world. But as he's talking about this, it made me think like the lady doth protest too much, methinks. In Shakespeare, Hamlet, the queen is watching a play and says this because it doesn't seem like it's actually like credible even. So, and then while he's there, this was just fascinating. The Russian dictator's visit to Astana yesterday, the Ukrainian flag appeared in one of the LED screens welcoming Putin to the city rather than the Russian tricolor. And Kazakhstan's state service announced that the LED screen had been hacked, traced to a foreign IP address. Well, how would you like to be stuck in traffic seeing that if you're Putin? Okay, people gather in Tbilisi for a spontaneous protest near the parliament building triggered by the Georgian Dream's decision to suspend the country's European integration. And this looks like a win for Putin. I mean, it looks like a win when Georgia is refusing to go to the EU. They're not going to negotiate on accession to the EU until 2028. That's announced by the Prime Minister. And it looks like Putin has won a political victory without having to expend military. In fact, Anna from Ukraine was talking about this. Putin's war has different shapes. That's spot on. But I think you have to understand that these people aren't going anywhere, and they still can rise up, and Putin would then be overly extended because he already has his troops committed to Ukraine. He can't put them there. And there's more to the conflicts around the world that he has to contend with. So here's the next big story. Russia threatens Japan with nukes. Japan with nukes in response to increased military cooperation with the United States. The United States is drawing up a joint military plan with Japan to deploy high-mobility artillery rocket systems, that's HIMARS, and other weapons to Japan's Nansei Island. Where's that? That's this island chain going down from Japan toward Taiwan. It's a great place to put those rockets just to make sure that there's some defense there. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said that Moscow's reaction to the possible deployment of U.S. medium-range missiles in Japan is reflected in the updated doctrine on nuclear deterrence. And then she says this, quote, Russia has repeatedly warned Tokyo that the appearance of U.S. medium-range missiles in Japan, Russia will regard as a real threat to its security and take the necessary adequate steps to strengthen its defense capabilities. Tokyo can get a clear idea of what this planned actions will be about by familiarizing itself with the updated provisions of the fundamentals of Russian policy in the field of nuclear deterrence. So we're supposed to read your manual? Is that what this is all about? So, but it's fascinating to my mind that placing these weapons here, which is across from China, is really that much of a threat to Russia. But now Russia has to spread itself thin, at least diffuse its attention at this point. And so now we have another issue happening. Syrian rebels are now within 7 kilometers of central Aleppo. This just happened last night. It's been kind of on hold or simmering in the back burner for a long time, but Syria and Russia are really cozy, and because of that relationship, that's going to divert more of Russia's attention. The unexpected offensive by Syrian rebels against the forces of Assad's government, backed by Russia, has become yet another element of global pressure on Moscow. Behind the rebels stands Turkey, a clear signal that Ankara has aligned itself against Russia in the broader global confrontation. So you got to understand who the moving pieces are and who's allied with who and that sort of thing. But this Syrian thing is another headache that Russia just does not want at this moment, and they're already spread thin. On November 27th, Syrian rebels launched a major offensive against Assad's forces in Aleppo province. This marks the first significant confrontation in years. The rebels captured 13 settlements, and they killed an Iranian general. And remember, Iran and Russia are pretty tight, and Syria and Russia are tight. And so Brigadier General, commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, was killed in an attack by Syrian opposition forces in western Aleppo. So it's all bad for Putin. This meme I thought was pretty funny. Jane Kiev wrote that Putin's puppet government in Syria now counting the hours they have left. Bashar al-Assad called. Bashar al-Assad called. Bashar al-Assad called. Okay, let's shift to the next big story. Keith Kellogg as the pick to be the Ukrainian point person. So let's talk about this. So Kellogg had kind of a bad rap initially when I was looking at this. People were saying, "Oh no, not him. He's the guy that was talking about Trump's peace plan would be to, if we're not going to give you any weapons if you don't come to the table, Ukraine, and Russia, if you don't come to the table, then we're going to give Ukraine all these weapons." Okay, so he could be problematic, but I don't know that he will be problematic. Let's look at a little bit of his background. Lieutenant General Kellogg is a serious person. He's a retired Green Beret who commands Special Forces Command Europe and 82nd Airborne Division. He's a Silver Star recipient for actions of Vietnam, 5 Bronze Stars, including a V for Valor. He also fought in Panama and the Gulf War. So he's no slouch. Here's what retired General Kellogg told Congress last year about the importance of supporting Ukraine.
Senator, I believe if you can defeat a strategic adversary not using any U.S. troops, you're at the acme of professionalism, because letting the Ukrainians defeat that, it takes a strategic adversary off the table, and then we can focus where we should be focusing against our primary adversary, which is China at this time. The concern I've got is I don't think we need to put American troops there. And if we fail in this, we may have to fight another European war. It'll be the 3rd time. And I don't think we should do that or need to do that as well.
Okay, so he's focused on what we should or shouldn't do. Here he is on Fox News, and this is Igor Shushko saying incoming special envoy to Ukraine, Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, in January 2023, following his trip to Ukraine. Let's hear what he has to say here.
Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, by the way, is just back from Ukraine, leading a very, very small delegation. They wanted to get to the bottom of what was going on and help the folks where it's needed. The General kind enough to join us. General, obviously you have probably a lot of jet lag, and we appreciate you sharing your journey with us. What can you tell us? What did you learn?
Yeah, Neil, thanks for having me this morning. Bottom line, the Ukrainians want to fight. They don't want U.S. troops. They don't want NATO troops. All they want is equipment, and they're going to fight this to the end. It's very clear to them that this is a very aggressive Russia move. It's targeted on civilians. It's targeted on infrastructure. You know, we went out pretty far to the northeast, and we saw some absolute incredible destruction out there by the Russians. And it was targeted on infrastructure. It was targeted on hospitals. It was targeted on schools. In fact, the mayor of Kyiv told us later that this is genocide. And I think when we look at what's going to happen over there, I believe it's very important we get them the equipment to fight, because I think now we're right on the cusp. And I think it's going to come out probably in just a couple of months when we get into the spring, into the summer, and then into the fall. This is going to be a fight to the end. The Ukrainians are not going to negotiate. They have no intention to negotiate. They want to.
Okay, so there he is. I don't know that he's going to be bad. I think he's probably going to be a net positive. Greg Terry did a great video about this. I'm not going to show that to you right now, but go over to his channel and see what he said, because he went back into Kellogg's background. Ben Hodges said Keith Kellogg can be an effective envoy. Good news is that he's experienced. He knows Russia is the aggressor and that Ukraine's sovereignty must be restored. But he's the envoy. The key will be Trump's policy. We'll still need a clear statement that U.S. strategic objective in Ukraine is what that is, what that looks like. We need to have that solidified from Trump. Okay, let's turn our attention to the next big story, and that is, how's the ruble doing? So up yesterday, the ruble was $1 to 113 rubles. It came back down a little bit to 108, well, 1.799 or something like that by the close today. So it's not doing very well. Steve Rosenberg from the BBC, when the Russian government paper headlines like "Panic Attack for Russia's Currency Market," you know that there's a problem. Let's just listen to a little bit of this.
Yesterday was a bad day for the ruble. Very bad. And there's no hiding it. The headline in the Russian government paper, the Rossiyska Gazeta this morning, "Panic Attack for Russia's Currency Market." Moskovsky Komsomolets, the break has snapped on the ruble. Nezavisima Gazeta reports that on the foreign exchange market, the ruble fell to 114 rubles to the dollar and hurried towards the no less shocking figure of 115. Since the beginning of November, the ruble has fallen by more than 11% against the dollar. This is not only a substantial, but also a spectacularly fast worsening of the ruble situation that becomes a statistically important inflationary factor with negative consequences for the domestic market.
Okay, so it's bad for the domestic market, and everybody knows that, and it's out in all these Russian papers. But Putin was saying this in 2014, which I thought was really interesting. The year is 2014, the beginning of the gamble. Putin explains that the fall of the ruble, that is, that the worsening of the ruble, leads to an increasing budget. Like here's what he had to say. The ruble dropped. It devalued slightly. Look. It fell 30%. We used to sell goods that cost $1, and we received 32 rubles for it. We sold the goods and received 32 rubles. Now we sell $1 worth of goods and receive 45. Increasing budget income. Well, he's just a genius, isn't he? Increasing budget income, except it's not worth that much. So only looking at that one side of the coin is problematic. This is just a metaphor for how government works in Russia. All right, last little bit. It's not a bank run. It's a special bankruptcy operation. All right, my friends, that's all that I have for you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.